You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, and whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater keen to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Coogs your first listen of the day. Appreciate you making us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Coogs. If you want to join in on the conversation but don't know what to say, in the comments down below, please tell us if you've seen the movie Blade Runner, because in today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. We're going to talk some about Houston hiring the Slade Runner, Slade Nagel, as the offensive coordinator. That's a nickname I just made up. We'll see if we run with it or not. We might run with it, actually. It's kind of sick. We got some signing day stuff to talk about as well. Signing day has actually gone remarkably well, certainly better than I was anticipating. I expect that to be a sad segment. And then some defensive coordinator updates. Spoiler alert, there might not be as many updates as you'd like. But Slade Nagel was hired as the Houston Cougar offensive coordinator. He spent the last season as the tight ends coach and special teams coordinator at LSU. In his career, he was also at LSU as a young guy, spent time at Texas State, Central Arkansas, and McNeese. And then ultimately got to Tulane in 2016 and worked his way there with Willie Fritz the same year, came in the same year there the whole time, tight ends coach, promoted to assistant head coach in 2022. We've since found out that with some older age stuff going on with the OC that year, he actually did a lot of the play calling for the majority of the year. That year became the offensive coordinator in 2023. And after Willie Fritz took the Houston job, Slade Nagel stayed on for the interim head coaching opportunity for about a week. And Fritz comes over to Houston. Slade Nagel stays at Tulane. And I think thought was that Fritz wanted Slade Nagel to come over. Then Nagel declined. Then the Tulane Green Wave went with a different head coaching option. Brought in his own offensive staff from Troy. Craddock did, and so then that meant that obviously Slade Nagel had to find somewhere to go. He's a Louisiana kid. He ends up at LSU. I've seen mixed reviews. Some Twitter accounts in LSU are upset that they let an offensive coordinator get out of their coach's office. They wanted some different offensive coordinators last year. I've also seen some LSU accounts that didn't know he was on their staff. So I've seen both ends of the spectrum as far as what LSU's response to this is. I do know that Willie Fritz would have taken Slade Nagel this time a year ago. And I think that that's important to keep in mind here. I think it makes sense that he didn't come initially. He was named the interim head coach, and I think it stands to reason. He thought he had a real chance, having been the assistant head coach and offensive coordinator recently, that he thought he had a real chance to get that head coaching job at Tulane and kind of keep building on that program. Ultimately, when he didn't and they went a different direction and a new offensive coordinator came in, he spent a year at LSU before ultimately reuniting with Willie Fritz. Now, that's not me reporting that that's why he stayed. That's me reading between lines and making what I think seem like educated guesses, but I'm open to being confirmed wrong there, I guess. As far as referencing the time he had a lot of say in what was happening at Tulane, it's inarguably the best 2-year stretch in Tulane football history. They've only had 5 10-win seasons in the entire history of Tulane football. One of them was Bobby Bowden's last year there in 1998. 2 of them happened in FDR's first term back in the 1930s. And the other 2 happened with Nagel and Willie Fritz working together. Now, I know that's in the American Athletic Conference, and things are a little different in the Big 12, but they've been playing football at Tulane since 1902. I feel like there's just statistically going to be a different year that had more success, or a different 2-year run that had more success. For what it's worth, those 2 years in the FDR term were actually separated by a 7-win year. So balances out a little bit. That's actually a better back-to-back year in 2022 and 2023. I look at Nagel, and Nagel brings in, his offense was described as a West Coast style offense in his year as the official offensive coordinator. They ran a spread run scheme in the year that he was calling a lot of the plays, but not officially the offensive coordinator, just the assistant head coach. And I look at him, a guy that can do multiple things. Because of that, if you look at his time as a tight ends coach and other different roles he had at Tulane, they ran a bunch of different offenses. Guys kind of stopped through there on their way to other coaching ventures. Obviously, he developed guys like Tajay Spears, Michael Pratt. They've had great talent over there as well, and beat some really big teams. I mean, they beat USC. They nearly knocked off Ole Miss. They beat Houston with a third-string quarterback. They've done some really impressive things over there together. And truthfully, I think had they brought Slade Nagel over as the offensive coordinator initially, we'd have all celebrated it as in this gigantic win, bringing a full staff together, guys that know each other, etc., all over. Obviously, that's a little bit dampened now with the defensive coordinator on the way out. Till a year later, he wasn't a coordinator and he wasn't an offensive coordinator last year, etc. But I think that perspective is important not to lose, right? Last year's offense was legitimately as bad as it could be. Just statistically speaking, rankings across the country speaking, it could not have been worse last year. And they're bringing in a guy that we all would have been much happier with going into last year. And I think that's a good thing. I think that people will want the more splashy name when this hire is, I guess, confirmed at some point on Thursday. It was leaked by a bunch of different guys. On3 had it first, I believe, on it over there. But so a bunch of different guys reporting it, and his name had been kind of coming up the more people you talk to. I think it's safe to say this is going to happen sometime on Thursday formally, but it's all but formalized at this point. And whenever it's formalized, I think people will have comments about could have gotten this person, could have gotten that person. This coordinator wasn't even a coordinator, and I think that's mostly because we've all gotten kind of taste of other options, looked out there and seen what's out there. Like full disclosure on this show, I've talked about how much I would have liked to see Brendan Marion in Houston. Marion's running the go-go offense out at UNLV. It looks like he is going to end up getting an offer to leave UNLV at a bunch of different places. They're going to be closer to $1.25 million, maybe. He's very coveted. Keep an eye on him with Oklahoma State if you're trying to follow the Brendan Marion train. But I think that people are constantly looking at what they missed out on and not realizing, truthfully, if we'd had Slade Nagel a year ago, we wouldn't be shopping for an offensive coordinator right now. We wouldn't have even been looking for that. We've been looking for maybe a transfer quarterback in the portal or some offensive linemen or something. We wouldn't have even been thinking about OC. I don't think there's a chance that this offense looks like it did last year with Nagel as the OC either. As we look at Willie Fritz putting his staff together here, and he's got to do more putting together of it, I think, than he anticipated 72 hours ago. I do think it's probably comforting for him to have known throughout this week that he was getting a guy that he trusted back. And they got to Tulane together. I know that they had the 2 years where they're kind of at the top of the totem pole there, but Slade came in as a tight ends coach the same year that Willie Fritz came in. That's a long time on task together, right? A lot of building of a program together, right? And they're trying to do the same thing at Houston. And so I think that relationship and the time on task doing that together matters. And then I would also point out that I think part of the reason this took so long this week is they're figuring out financials. They know they got the guy they want. They know that they just had to beat, I think, as a tight end special teams coordinator, he was getting $525 a year next year at LSU. So they just have to find a way to beat that number, make it competitive with other Big 12 offensive coordinators, right? And then they suddenly thought that, oh, hey, and we're going to have this influx of money from the Dana Holgorsen thing happening. And then suddenly it's well, we have to spend some of that money probably to go get a new defensive coordinator because we can't retain our old. Those things are all cycling together. So the financials and those, I think that's probably based on reading between the lines, between a couple things you read out there and a couple things I read in my, I think that's probably what's slowing this down a little bit. Why it didn't happen Monday, right? It could have happened Monday. Position coach becoming a coordinator wouldn't have been the kind of thing LSU would have fought back on keeping or something. I don't think by any stretch. But for what it's worth, Brian Kelly had at LSU, head football coach there, been at Notre Dame for a long time, had glowing things to say about Slade Nagel. And so I don't think that there's bad terms there. It isn't a Louisiana guy. As far as that connection, the Bayou Belt across the Gulf Coast there goes. But on the whole, I think it's a good hire. And again, I try and remind everyone, it's a hire you would have been really happy with a year ago. There's no reason to be less than that now because he took a year at a different job, right? And so we're going to talk more about the offense as guys fill out the roster, talk more about the offense as we get to spring practices and spring games and so on. But having Slade Nagel about to sign is really, really nice, but it's not quite the same as other guys signing that can play football as opposed to just coaching it. And Houston got a whole bunch of those on Wednesday, December 4th, National Signing Day. So I want to talk about those in a second. But before we get to all that, I do want to talk to them about our new buddies over at Better Together. You can download the app from either store, App Store, Google Play Store, wherever. And if you want to draft a season-long fantasy team, you can go do that. But Better Together is the first cooperative daily fantasy platform that offers you a chance to redo that fantasy draft that McCaffrey got hurt or whatever the case may be, right? Where teamwork triumphs and talent, you can play with your friends and Better Together, not against them. You just pick more or less on real-time player stats, then strategize with your partner or partners to boost your odds and climb the leaderboard together. So grab a friend and enjoy the social daily fantasy movement at Better Together. Better Together is the first cooperative daily fantasy application. Provides a sense of camaraderie and enhances the social experience of watching sports. Is a great way to stay connected with your friends that you can't watch sports together with in person. Put your group chats to the test and let you prove your team and knowledge is the best. Download Better Together now from the App Store. Sign up using promo code Locked On for a free $10 entry into any NCAA football or NFL contest. Play with me at Locked On NFL. Locked On CFB Saturday games this Saturday, Championship Saturday, with the code Locked On, because winning alone is fun, but better together.